Queen Elizabeth I. Queen Elizabeth I was never really meant to be queen. She was actually third in line to the throne, after her brother and sister. But after her sister, Queen Mary I, died, Elizabeth became queen. Have a quick look here at her signature. What can you tell about her just from looking at this? Spend some time looking at it. Look at the detail. What does it tell you about her? Who was Queen Elizabeth I? If you go to the PDF document and follow the link below, you can find out some more information about her. Watch the short video, see what you can learn. This is also a good place to take a pit stop and do your first task. Complete the Elizabeth I reading comprehension. There are a couple to choose from. There's even a slightly easier one with a little less writing with questions in between if you would prefer to do that one. See what you can find out about her. After you've done that, you could create a profile of Queen Elizabeth I. Include information about her such as when she was born, when she died, the dates of her reign as queen, did she have any children or a husband, what was her religion, or any other significant information you can find out about her. So it's a good idea to pause the video here and have a look at the above website and have a go at completing the comprehensions so you can get a little bit more information about who Queen Elizabeth I was. Not everybody believed that Queen Elizabeth was up to the job of running the country. This was because she was an unmarried woman. There was said to be many plots against her, either trying to persuade her to marry or to even overthrow her. One of those said people involved in plots was Mary, Queen of Scots. She was said to be in many plots against Elizabeth I. One of those plots was called the Babington plot. Now, Mary, Queen of Scots, was said to have been caught receiving and writing secret messages to a group of Catholics led by Anthony Babington. She was said to be involved in planning treason. So Mary, Queen of Scots, along with a group of Catholics, wanted to remove Elizabeth from the throne, so Mary could also become Queen of England. Now, Elizabeth was a very intelligent woman, and she actually had spies working for her, and it was their job to intercept these plots that were being made behind her back. And one of her spies did in fact catch some of the letters that were being sent between Mary, Queen of Scots and Anthony Babington. Now, they were actually writing in code. So Elizabeth's spies had to decode the messages before they were able to understand what the plan was. And they discovered the whole plan, and there is this code called the Babington Code. Now, this leads on to your next task. If you go to the documents on the website, you will see one that says the Babington Code, and you've got a document where you can decode it, and you've got the code to help you do the decoding. I've also popped the answers up on there just so you can have a look after to see if you've got the right message. Now, another place I could direct you to at this point is a Horrible Histories episode, all about Mary, Queen of Scots. Now, this is just a little bit extra for you to have a look at and actually gives you some information on who Mary, Queen of Scots was. And at the end of the episode, it briefly talks about the Babington plot. So if you're interested in finding out who Mary, Queen of Scots was and what her relationship to all this was, have a watch of the Horrible Histories episode. Portraits of Queen Elizabeth. So let's have a little look at what Elizabeth looked like and how we know what she looked like. Now, as we know, the public at this time had to rely on portraits to see what their king or queen looked like. Remember, there was no TV, there was no internet, so a Tudor portrait were the profile pictures of their day. Elizabeth I wanted to ensure that everyone who saw these portraits was impressed by her. She wanted to look strong, powerful, beautiful, and clever. She controlled what the artists were allowed to include in the portraits and even requested that they add features to them. Elizabeth I only posed for a portrait on 8 occasions throughout her whole life, yet there have been over 200 paintings produced. Queen Elizabeth was clever throughout her reign in how she used these paintings to send secret messages to her public and others who may be watching her reign from abroad. The next series of slides are going to be examples of these portraits, and I want you to look carefully at them and think about the questions as I ask them. So this one was Lady Elizabeth, painted in 1546. So this picture was actually painted before Elizabeth became queen. Have a close look at it. What do you notice? What objects are in the picture? Why do you think they're there? Maybe pause the video now and have a look at them. Elizabeth I's coronation. So this portrait was done in 1559, and it was a celebration of Elizabeth actually becoming queen. So what do you notice about this picture? How is it different to the previous picture? Look at the objects she's holding in her hand. What do you think these objects stand for? Again, pause this here, have a look in more detail at the portrait. This one is Queen Elizabeth, so a Pelican portrait, 1575. Again, have a look closely at it. What symbols can you see? Are there any to do with the Tudor family or show that Elizabeth belongs to the Tudor family? Also, how do you know she is rich? How do you know she's important? What can you tell about her from this picture? Queen Elizabeth, painted in 1592. Quite an interesting picture, especially looking at the background portrait. What has the artist chosen to paint in the background? Why do you think the artist has painted that? What impression did Elizabeth want to give to her people by looking at this portrait? The rainbow portrait. Now this one is a really interesting one with lots of details. Have a look closely at her arm. What creature do you think this is? And if you look even closer, can you see what symbols have been embroidered onto the dress? Now the next slide is a close-up of those symbols. Here it is. Here's the close-up. Why do you think she would have had eyes and ears embroidered onto her dress, and then for it to be shown in a portrait for the world to see? What sort of message do you think Queen Elizabeth was trying to share with the people of the world? Pause the video here, maybe have a chat with a grown-up about it. Let's take a moment to reflect. Which is your favourite portrait and why? And then also, which portrait do you think Elizabeth would have been most pleased with and why? Now, if you go back to the PDF document of this presentation on the website, you can follow the link to a YouTube clip of a Horrible Histories sketch of Elizabeth and her portrait painter. You only need to watch up to the quiz because that's where the sketch ends. Within Tudor times, symbols had a meaning within portraits. For example, if there was a Tudor rose on the portrait, it was showing that it was a Tudor king or queen. If you saw a paper in her hands, this might show important business. If you saw a snake, it could show cunning. If you saw flowers on it, it would suggest that there was youth. Or eyes, ears, showing that she is always watching. Gloves might show elegance. Swords show justice. A globe or a map show ambition to rule the world. Now, obviously, you might have noticed that some of these symbols you have just seen in those portraits of Elizabeth. So you might be getting an idea now of the message she was trying to communicate with the world and her people every time she had a portrait done. This leads on to your next task. We would like you to either become the person who paints the portraits or Elizabeth's dress designer. It's your choice. So Elizabeth is now getting old and ill, and the people in the north of England are getting a bit restless with her. So she needs a new portrait to portray to the world that she is still in charge. So you can either do us a portrait of Queen Elizabeth, or you could just design her new dress. Keep in mind those symbols you've seen on the previous slide. Which ones would you include in her dress or her portrait, and why? Would you have her standing on a globe? Now, what message does your portrait or your dress give to the people of England? Think carefully about it. You might want to stop the video here and have a go at doing your design. And obviously we would love to see them emailed into us and find out the reasoning behind the symbols you have used. A quick true or false quiz. See what you can remember. When the Queen got cross, she would throw shoes at people. As her hair got thinner and faded, she wore a wig. Shakespeare and his actors performed for her at Christmas. Her teeth were extremely black and she liked to pick them in public. She suffered from smallpox as a child, and as a result her skin was covered in scars. She used white makeup made of lead, which is potentially poisonous, to cover up her scars. Finally, Elizabeth was very proud of how clean she was, taking a bath every 3 months. And they are actually all true facts about Queen Elizabeth. Finally, let's have a little SMSC question about Queen Elizabeth. So Queen Elizabeth is remembered as an important woman in British history. Do you think she deserves to be remembered in this way? And then, what 5 words would you use to describe Queen Elizabeth? We are looking forward to hearing all your responses and seeing some of your work.